Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just give it a few more seconds. It's the top of the hour, and we'll get started. Excited to have you here. On behalf of Harbinger Group and WorkTech Advisory, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us today for this session of the Tech CXO Roundtable. I'm Jahnavi, and it is my pleasure to be your co-host for this panel discussion. The topic for our CXO Roundtable today is how to fast-track your GenAI product roadmap. Now, I'm super excited about this topic, and I'm sure all of you joining us today are as well, not just because GenAI is all over the news these days, but because, whether it is to bring innovation to their products or merely to stay competitive, one thing is for sure, GenAI is a disruptive technology that all product companies are trying to embrace and make the most out of, which is why I think today's topic for the roundtable is so pertinent and timely. We have an amazing panel of industry experts here with us who will be sharing their valuable insights and considerations for incorporating Gen AI capabilities into products. So I, for one, can't wait to hear from them. But before we begin, let's just watch a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome to Harbinger and WorkTech Advisory's exclusive webinar for the C-Suite, the Tech CXO Roundtable. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the Q&A panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's begin.
Just to add a quick note, we will be monitoring the chat and Q&A, so please keep those questions and comments flowing, and we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end of the session during the Q&A time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our hosts today, Marilyn and Shrikant, who will be leading this roundtable discussion. First, Marilyn Pearson Hendricks. Marilyn is the co-founder and managing partner at WorkTech Advisory, a global consultancy specializing in the HR and WorkTech sector, helping SaaS companies unlock the full market potential of their offerings. Marilyn has dedicated over 20 years of her career to advancing innovative approaches to people management at scale used by leading organizations across the globe. Her experience lies at the intersection of HR technology, business transformation, and global go-to-market. Her past roles have included senior executive positions and SME positions spanning sales, marketing, thought leadership, alliances, and demand generation across major brands, as well as emerging companies in the industry. So welcome, Marilyn. Very excited to have you. And
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Of course. And our second host is Shrikant Pattathil, President and CTO of Harbinger Group. Shrikant has been with Harbinger for nearly 25 years and has been pivotal in writing Harbinger's success story. Over the years, he has provided his leadership across various functions like software development, sales, as well as marketing. His recent focus has been on helping our customers in the HR and learning domains solve their product development challenges. For customers and his team, Shrikant continues to be an inspiration and a source of all technology knowledge and shifting technology paradigms. So welcome, Shrikant.
Thanks, Jahnavi. Thank you very much.
And with that, I will hand over to Marilyn and Shrikant to take it over from here.
Thanks, Jahnavi. So thank you for that introduction and getting us started here. So yeah, I will help us get started with this topic, and then Marilyn will help us with doing the panel discussion here. This is a very interesting topic. We have been discussing about this for the last 6 months, and it's glad that we've been able to bring together the panel as well as this session for all of you. Before we begin, I want to tell you something like why we thought about this. a few months back when I was at a user conference, one of our customers was hosting it, and it was like, there were a lot of presentations to the customers, and bunch of it was about AI. And post one of the AI presentations, the customer success team and the account management team came to us and said that, you know what, we're very excited with this whole support automation that you're talking about. And, we have legacy and tons of data. Can we do something with all of that? And, so that we get more efficient, and B, we can solve our customer problems very quickly. So we took that problem to the product management team, and they said, oh, okay, here's one more, Gen AI idea out there. I already have so much. So that's when I realized that, product management they have the current product roadmap to deal with, and now they have these ton of Gen AI features that they have from various departments, customers, all of them they're handling. So a topic like this might be very interesting, of how product management should prioritize, first of all, which Gen AI features to build. And then with each one of them, there are different challenges. How do you deal with that? What are your options when it comes to taking some of them to go to market? And then finally, we will also talk about as to what we think are some of the outcomes that should help you decide why to pick certain things and not certain things. So that's the kind of background and the essence what we want to cover through our panel discussion here today. Hope you'll get a lot of insights during the course of this hour, and I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation. But before we start, I wanted to share some more data so that we put in some more context around this topic. So we've been studying the research material that is being put out there, and the impact of Gen AI. And one thing that came out and consistently came out, and specifically with Gartner also, is that in the next 2-3 years, almost 80% of software vendors would have embedded Gen AI capabilities as features. And today it's almost 5%. So you can imagine the amount of features that are going to get into these products. Of course, that 2026 could be 2028, 2030, but the journey has started. So that's very important. I'm sure all of you in the audience are also feeling that. So that brings me to kind of to a poll where I want, and all of us here wanted to understand from an audience perspective, where are you in your journey when it comes to building Gen AI capabilities in your product? Are you considering them? Are you prototyping them? You've developed them already, or you've released? And maybe you have multiple products, multiple applications, they're in different stages. So you can answer accordingly. But Genevieve, if you can bring up the poll, maybe it'll just give the panel and all of us an idea of where the audience is in terms of their Gen AI journey.
It should just be up.
Give it a few seconds more. Okay, we have people in all buckets. I mean, probably in the considering stage, which is quite common in terms of, where bulk of the audience is. So probably this session should prove very useful to all of you. And I am assuming as the discussion goes further, all of you will have enough tips to move to your next stage based on where you are in your journey. So thank you for that poll. Okay, did I talk before the results? Okay, maybe now you can see the results. Okay. So yeah, I mean, basically, what I was saying is most of you are in the considering bucket, and then I see at least a few words in all the other areas as well. So we'll speak to that. Okay. Thanks, Janavi. Thanks for running that for all of us.
Of course.
Moving further, based on some of the research that we did, what we are seeing is there are different approaches companies are taking when it comes to building AI features. So specifically the large organizations, because they have such a big customer base, partner base, they are also reaching out to their partners and vendors to build AI capabilities that are extension as their product. So companies like Workday and Instructure, large in their space themselves, they have created exclusive AI marketplaces. That means, they have traditional marketplaces, but for AI, they've created exclusive marketplaces. Some other companies like Zoom, Atlassian, Salesforce, and others, within their existing ecosystem, they're giving a lot of attention to AI and GenAI applications. So different companies are adopting different things, but if you are a pretty large company, then this is one approach where you can fast track your roadmap. And we thought we should share that what we're seeing in the industry. Moving further, we kind of talked a little bit about business use case, and I think we'll go deeper in this topic. But there are three buckets of why you build Gen AI applications. First one could be just basic operational efficiencies, and second one would be how it impacts your customers based on user experience or satisfaction. And third thing could be a more outreach, like you build a brand new product or brand new feature because you have exclusive data or you have some great idea and so forth. But it depends on where you are and why you choose to build something. And I'm sure our panelists will throw light on why you should choose based on and what you should give priorities to as you prioritize your AI capabilities. And finally, when it comes to the how part, it's primarily most of the ISVs thinking about building applications. And one approach could be to leverage the foundational models like the OpenAI and Google, Anthropic, and so forth, and leverage that to build. Other could be use ready-made tools that are already developed applications and write like interfaces on top of it, in things like Midjourney, translation engines, and so forth. So they've already solved 80-90% of the problems, and then you are like embedding them. However, irrespective of that, you have to build it for your user base. So you will have to, because you're rolling out as a product feature or a capability, you will have to tune it to your user base. You will have to tune it for your data. You will have to do prompt engineering on top of it, integrate, and so forth. So, but different people are choosing different approaches of how to build it, how to do these things. So I thought, this might also be a good way to share as to how you can go about building some of these applications. And I'm sure in the discussions we will touch deeper on some of these topics. So without further ado, let me welcome Marilyn to welcome our panel and get us into this discussion. Over to you, Marilyn.
Great. Thank you so much, Shrikant. It is truly an honor and a privilege to introduce our panelists here for today. And so what I'd like to do is, as we prepare for our questions and our discussions, is Meg, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your background, and I think we'll also be sharing LinkedIn profiles, so you'll get a few invites to connect, and then we'll turn it over to you, Greg, and then we'll start diving into our questions. So Meg, if you could just share a little bit.
Yeah, my favorite LinkedIn invite. So thank you for that, Marilyn. I'm Meg Bear. I'm calling in from the Bay Area. I'm a fifth generation Bay Area native and a longtime technology innovator and provider. Most recently, I was president at SAP SuccessFactors, and I'm currently on the board of Hendricks and Struggles. So looking forward to the conversation. Greg?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Great to be here also. My career started as an IO psychologist, but it really thrust me into HR technology from the beginning. And so for the last 20 plus years, I've progressively worked in product across a number of HR tech providers, in the assessment space, the culture and leadership space, and most recently at Energage, where we run the Top Workplaces program, which is like the largest kind of employer recognition program in the United States. And so lots of data that takes advantage of Gen AI. So excited to be talking about it.
Oh, fantastic. Again, thank you again for taking some time to really work with the community and to reflect and share on your experiences and lessons learned and insights that you have. I think about the brain power in the room and listening, as we've got a lot to talk about. And for those that are listening in here today, thank you for being here. And we'd like you to, we know you're probably multitasking, but if you're inspired to be part of the discussion, please feel free to make use of the chat. We will be monitoring that. And so we may pull your question in during our discussion, and then we do have some time at the end that we're going to have for Q&A. But as we were planning for this topic, which we all found very enticing, really the first question that we wanted to ask for both Meg and Greg is, why were you willing to be on this panel? What makes you interested in this topic? And please feel free to, include any reflections and commentary in this opening question. Meg, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off.
Of course, of course. So I think like everybody on this call, I became interested very early when we've been thinking about AI for a long time, but when OpenAI went public, we all recognized that we might have been focusing more on analysis and automation with AI and less on the interactive and the generative side of AI. And so this caused, I think, everybody to take a moment of reflection and ask ourselves, were we being ambitious enough? Were we imagining the future with enough color and clarity and enough innovation? And so for me, as an innovator and as somebody that's been at the kind of front of disruption, I recognized very quickly that this was an opportunity to really elevate the kind of value that you could create with enterprise applications and the way that you could think about work differently, which has been kind of the entirety of my journey as a professional and as a leader. And so when I think about what we're trying to do together, I imagine that things will change dramatically between today and the future. And the pace of that change is going to go pretty exponentially. So I want to have a conversation, not just here, but in general, around how do we use that innovation? How do we use that opportunity to really transform our own ambition for what we put forward in technology, as well as our own clarity about where we want to end up in the future of work? So I'll pause there and let Greg add.
Yeah, great, Megan. Well, so kind of like you, I would say I'm somewhat of a disruptor, and in a lot of my interest in this is a very personal journey and loving the cutting edge technology and always being fascinated by what's possible. And it was about 7 years ago that we built a natural language processing tool that read job ads, and it was excruciating to build, and it took all our time to label job ads, and it was just really exhausting. The end product ended up being pretty neat, but as I've moved on in my career to other areas, found other opportunities where I would think, well, why can't we take this sort of more kind of building upon natural language processing? Why can't we go further? And so just during my wee hours of the night, I taught myself Python, and the goal was to summarize employee comments. And we get about 1 million of them a month where I work. And so I was using the old tech, and the old tech, I can tell you, I had 12 models running. I barely knew what I was doing in Python. It was, my wife would look at me and say, "What are you doing? Why are you obsessing over this?" And the end result was less than ideal. And this was using just the precursor to GPT. So like, it wasn't that far long ago, but it was still pretty pitiful what I was doing. And so, and kind of as I went about that, and then was able to sort of see the value of what now all of a sudden existed and how it quickly solved an issue that I had been trying to solve on my own, it became kind of clear, like, wow, this is amazing that we were able to, do this so efficiently and so quickly. And sort of from a secondary standpoint for me, it's that, this is kind of as an IO psychologist through the years, I've answered about every question I could ever answer about the practices and nuances and what to do around assessments and coaching and feedback and the law. And, personally, I've written a lot of it a lot. and I end up in new roles where I've got the same questions coming. And I found myself starting to kind of feel guilty, but I would ask GPT, I'd ask it to give me an answer. And then the answer was surprisingly similar to something that I've probably written before, because it all comes from the same source of information. But I wouldn't just send it out, but it allowed me to save time in my own life. And again, I was guilty at first. I didn't want to share it with anyone. But then I started to share, look, this is GPT's version. Why don't we edit it a little? And I would save time. And I think those personal experiences of not only being able to accomplish something that I couldn't do easily, and to save time and seeing the value of that kind of led me to start pushing it further for what can we do at the product level to make that come alive the same way and have the same kind of delight and experience that I had. And that's what keeps me interested in it to this day.
All right. Well, really, really great insights. And if I might be able to also include an answer to the question in this discussion, when Shrikant came up with this idea of this particular topic for the CXO Roundtable, what was really interesting, I think, about it is that we see so much content out in the industry for the end consumer of what it is that the goodness that we're inventing for them, right? For the buyer, for the employers. What I hadn't seen in the discussion was a conversation amongst the product leaders on how generative specifically was affecting the way that we do our jobs and our lives, and really the profession of product management and leading the organizations through the change, and that this is happening so fast. So this is the one for the vendor community, if you would, when we have a chance to talk about these topics. So that was my 2 cents in that. And so the hope for you today as a participant in listening in on this content, or if you're listening to a recording of this session, is that you have some key takeaways. And so we have some ideas on what they might be, but hopefully some magic happens here. So that leads us into the next question. And Greg, what we'll do is we'll have you start with this one. But the question is, how has GenAI influenced your organization's product roadmap? And can you share an example? Now, you previewed that a little bit, but if I inspire you to go a little level deeper, I mean, I'm talking about like the full-on roadmap planning, and then getting into maybe even some prioritization, like what's happened behind the scenes on how you govern this stuff.
Yeah, so it's actually, quickly taking a bigger role in our roadmap every quarter. And really at Energage, if our mantra is really about turning employee feedback into value. And so I hinted, we get a lot of comments. And what we do with organizations is we help companies turn that feedback into value in 2 ways. One of them is more standard, you might expect, like the engagement survey. You get your comments, you've got a ton to look through. How do I make sense of it? And the other way is we turn comments into branding, tools that organizations can use to sort of megaphone their brand out to the world using authentic employee feedback as the basis. And so, for us, it quickly became apparent one of the biggest sources of frustration we get is, what do we do with all these messy comments? What is there anything meaningful there? What do I show a CEO when we have 40,000 comments, or we've got, a department leader who doesn't have a lot of time? How do we surface what matters fast and make it meaningful? And so, from that perspective, we did originally kind of follow what you might see in more standard, which is when you look at comments, a lot of it's always been sort of topic analysis and sentiment analysis. And where we started to add on was stuff like summarization. So when you go to Amazon, you look at a product you want to look at, they always gave you comments, but then they started to give you a summary of the comments. And so in a very similar way, we see the value of like, hey, we can do more with this qualitative data. And so along the way, that was the first piece, was how do we make this qualitative data more consumable and usable for companies to help them build their cultures and understand their cultures. And I will say that, like, on this journey, we already had some topic and sentiment analysis work that was done. And that work wasn't was good, but with the addition of being able to bring in an AI solution, a generative AI solution, we were able to just sort of lead to better results more quickly, and provide sort of things that no one has seen before, like these nice little tight summaries of each of the comments and how they work. The second part of it was sort of in that same line as on our roadmap, was doing the same thing with branding content. So imagine we get all of these comments. They're like little mini testimonials. Now, some of them are pretty negative, right? And so let's take those negative ones out. But for branding, you're gifted with people saying, my manager is amazing and helped me grow every day. I love working in this company because I find myself, becoming a better person. I mean, these really amazing quotes. And we're able to take that information and using generative AI, translate it from sort of simple comments into shareable content. And what we've learned along the way is that people love the idea of wanting to share their sort of branding content to the world. It's like anything else in the social recruiting space or social media. But a lot of the companies we work with are in this mid-level, sort of mid-size. They don't have employment branding teams. Their marketing teams don't have a lot of budgets. So what we've been able to do is turn around and say, here is ready to go kind of content for you that you didn't have to come up with, that can be shared almost instantly on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, saving them time, making them excited, and giving them kind of a roadmap to like get going with these assets they have, rather than worrying about how are they going to go about doing those things. And so our roadmap built that way. And from there, obviously, it's just sort of building upon sort of different pieces of that puzzle. How can we provide better action support to people who get results, give them, customized feeling development and action guides? How can we take bar graphs and quickly tell them the summary of what's on the page so they don't have to look up and down? And that's how what it's done is it's stopped us from keeping on the same old, let's build more analytics, let's build more bar graphs and more nav to have to slice and dice. And it's moving us towards how can we raise the most important things or deliver the most meaningful information more quickly and in a way that's more consumable to people. And so, we're in our early journey, but so far it's been a good start. And it's I think the part for me that is just like all of our reactions are when you kind of first interact with ChatGPT, it's amazing when people start first interacting with their own comments and things, the same way, but it's their data. And I think that the light bulbs go off and the smiles get big. And I'll leave you with this one thought on it is we built, and we didn't make this for everybody, but we would take the most positive employee comments and we'd write a poem. Generative AI would write a poem. And, was anyone going to buy it? Probably not. But I watched a couple tears come in the eyes of C-suiters who were like, this is beautiful. And this describes our company and it's our employees' comments. And it just like things like that were never possible before. And so those moments, again, are what make the roadmap continue to shift in that direction.
Wow. That's very cool. There's a lot in there, Greg. We're going to unpack a little bit more of that. Meg, what's going through your brain on this question here? I can go ahead and repeat it.
Yeah, no worries. I really wanted to kind of break down a little bit of what Greg was talking about at a kind of abstract level that helps people see what he's really doing in this, like finding places of delight. So first off, I do believe that this is a moment where we're elevating the role of product leadership, because what we need to be really aware of is where is the points of value and where are the competitive threats. And these things are going to be changing really dramatically. So truly understanding your customer, understanding your market, understanding your stakeholders, and understanding your competitive landscape, the need for that is going to elevate a lot, because what you're going to find and what you need to be careful about is that you don't get into a feature arms race, but you really get grounded on what is the value that you're bringing forward in the market, what is your true north, and what is your customer competitive advantage. Because when you build these delighting opportunities into your product with GenAI, you're going to need it to really resonate with your audience. And otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time, you're going to do a lot of things, and it's going to be kind of mediocre at best. So I do think that the way that you want to look at product roadmaps, the way we looked at it at SAP, the way that we look at it with companies that I'm advising, is really about grounding in what your value proposition is, finding those points of delight that are really about connecting deeply with the user of your software to help them feel important and valued, and that you're really deeply trying to bring value. And so I think Greg's example is perfect there of how do you make the upside bigger and how do you make the drudgery smaller? That's really a great framework to think about it. And then the embedded part that he was talking about is really the technology underneath. And here you need to be really careful because there's going to be a lot of innovation happening at every layer. And you want to be able to maximize that innovation while reducing the risk to your own organization. So getting a really strong point of view, as Shrikant mentioned at the beginning, a strong point of view about where you're using commercial capabilities and where you're adding your own value on top, and making sure that that's easily swappable over time, so that as things evolve, you're not having to go back and redo everything to take advantage of the new innovation. So having a really strong architecture underneath and a strong point of view is going to really help all of that.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I was just going to add
ahead.
just to what Meg, you were saying, like, I know we're going to cover it a little later, but part of that learning journey has very much been what you just said, which is it starts off as an idea. It feels very accessible on the short term, but very quickly you find yourself questioning, do we have the operational pieces in place? Do we have the enabling technologies in place? And so our roadmap, in a sense, from that level has gone from let's try something to very quickly, how do we make this so that we can build additional things in a scalable way versus them being these one-off kind of experiments. And in all honesty, it's hard because the technology is changing quickly. And the choice of your vendors that you use, the innovations, you almost have to be like doubly scalable, which is you can't double down on any one thing yet as your future, because around every week, every month, there is something else that's better than the thing before and can do the job you need done more quickly or more efficiently or accurately.
And then don't forget cost. Like, again, everything we're talking about here, the unit economics is really hard to predict because of the fact there's a lot of shift. But you can use really good heuristics against this. You can understand where things are getting cheaper and where the use is going to go up, and think about that from the beginning, because otherwise you can build something really great, but you can't actually afford it in the market in the end. So having a good understanding, again, I'm just going to go back to the role of product is going to become very, very strategic, even more than it already has been, because it's not just about building a product, but it's about navigating the change in the ecosystem that's going to be happening very, very quickly.
So much wisdom in this discussion. And actually, it's a really good segue into our next question, which is if we go deeper into what the track that you guys just laid here on our last question, but how do you prioritize, right? So we started to lay out a little bit of a framework and call it taxonomy even, but how do you prioritize GenAI capabilities within your product roadmap? And then this is closely related to, do you build it all yourself? What do you buy? What are the options? And then this also the idea of partnering, which goes back to one of the points that Shrikant made for the larger vendors are building even some of the like almost mini ecosystems just of call it curated AI partners that supplement what they do and augment their platforms. Like Zoom is a great example as well. So we could have a meeting note taker right here. And you guys probably use those as well.
Actually, there is one already in the chat, you'll see.
In the chat, yeah.
Yeah, I think the prioritization piece, Marilyn, is really important. And I think, again, you need to be thinking more in terms of a portfolio. So the way that I've done it and the way that I see innovative leaders doing it is across a couple dimensions. Number one, what can you act on quickly? Because you both need the learning, as Greg described, but you also need to build the velocity internally and the ability to execute. So like bringing all of that together so that you can learn not just how to build something, but how to get it to market and how to realize customer value, making sure that you're understanding how use is happening and how that folds back into your product roadmap. So thinking in terms of doing something quickly to accelerate your learning across the entire journey is an important piece. And then at the same time, thinking in terms of a portfolio, where is your sustained competitive advantage and where's your sustained competitive moat? Sometimes that'll be really obvious, and sometimes you have to work harder for that. But that is really the long-term goal here. And again, to drop a few hints, you should be thinking not just in terms of providing value today, but long-term sustainable value. And that really gets to Greg's point about data capture. Are you capturing the right data, and are you capturing it with an intention that you can do even more value added things over time? So having short-term value, but having a long-term competitive moat tied to data that is going to be uniquely yours, and that's going to provide your customers a new ability to compete more effectively, whether that's faster or more efficiently or driving more revenue or more business outcomes. However that is for you, you really, really need to have that thinking part of your roadmap process right now today.
Excellent. Greg, what are your thoughts on the prioritization? Isn't it a little bit heartbreaking being in a product leader where you have way more ideas and things that you'd like to do than budget, time, energy, bandwidth, right? How do you make the decisions?
So unfair. So unfair.
Unfair.
I mean, I agree with Meg 100%. Like I think the first part of the prioritization is, are we, I hate to keep using the word, but are we learning and are we becoming more competent in our understanding of the power and capabilities of generative AI? So I really, and I don't know if it's true of all companies, but I think there's a lot of companies where there's there's some people who have played with GPT. There's some people that are against it all, like they're afraid to get involved. And then there's some really like in there kind of knowing what is possible. And I think there's a stage there of that's not just your product, but bringing the organization along into learning that doing this is an important capability and competency that our product organization needs to build. And so to when Meg was saying, like, you need, moving fast, I think that it's really important to have some wins to get some experience, because there's a lot you can do. Like we've got this, brainstorm of like, oh, and it can, and we could, but like, and there might be amazing leapfrog ideas. Meanwhile, there's still some really basic building blocks, I think, that are important for people to get used to, comfortable with, and aware of, that kind of leads to the buy versus build part of this, which, one of the questions was, do you buy, build, or partner? I've found that, at least for our own experience, that building, at least in the early going, has been really invaluable to the same message. There's a lot that goes on once you get below the surface of what you see in an interface like Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. And for example, prompt engineering is such an ultra valuable skill. And in fact, a lot of what vendors have out there today are just really well prompt engineered solutions with, that they've figured out how to deliver to you to then do something else. And so I think learning about that, learning about beyond the surface level, exploring what's capable, those types of things are just really critical, so that you can prototype on your own. You can play a little and see what's possible without having to spend money, like significant amounts of money. And that's sort of in the prioritization, I think, building something to get that experience is really valuable. I would just say, I think partnering is amazing when you know what it is that you're trying to do and you want support to build it scalably and quick, with focus and maybe a new level of better engineering and those types of things. And so, but I was just kind of adding on to the buy versus build versus partner part.
You guys are making my job easier in terms of asking questions because you're laying the track, the next one. But this is the point in our panel discussion. Again, I'm bringing all the multitaskers back, where we're going to talk about maybe not everything is puppy dogs and roses here. So if we think about maybe some lessons learned and encouraging some sharing, have you had any road rash, right? Any challenges? Is it the change? Is it the enormity? Is it the what headwinds are you running into?
Oh yeah.
With your team.
Do you want to go first, Greg, or do you want me?
I mean, it's so many. I mean, from in some ways, senior leaders who are, like, I don't think generative AI is going to, people who are like, this isn't going to change the world. So having to commit to influencing that taking these risks and spending this money are good at the sort of early stages. I think that's been one of the challenges is people are, right away pointed out, and it's true, but this resistance, there's hallucination, there's repeatability of responses, there's people having experiences out there reading the news about how AI goes wrong. And I feel like, again, you put that all together, and one of the challenges is just getting full commitment that this is a valid and solvable way to go forward. Yes, things like hallucinations are a problem. They can be solved for. Repeatability, yes, you can ask the same question over and over and get 10 different responses. And when you're working in like a company, like when you have data as your kind of core, it's really uncomfortable when the answers come out differently, 10 times. And so I think one of the challenges is kind of getting people to be comfortable with it. The second one for me that's really been a painful lesson is that data science and engineering are not the same thing. And so our first investment was largely like, let's get some really smart AI experts, data scientists in. I like to play. So I like, we have ideas. They would build things. That part was really fun. But when we got to the point where we needed to sort of implement it, put it in the product, it left a lot to be desired because we had spent a lot of time engineering, a nice solution over here on Python code, and found out, again, I wasn't as thinking about this, so it's a shame on me, but okay, there are issues with scalability. Do we put this on a virtual machine? What's the cost going to be? What do we do with rate limits that these large language models have? How do we work around the cost factors? And it really was a challenge because it went from fun and innovative to like serious and kind of like, I don't know the answers. And so that was sort of my learning really was, wow, I think I sort of missed the part where the two worlds had to come together sooner. And I doubled down more on the data science. And then at the end, the engineering and development we didn't have the right way to go forward right away. And it really slowed us down.
Yeah, I will just add to the removing fun from the equation. So, at Success Factors, we had a global team. We were part of a bigger ecosystem within SAP. And I am definitely going to drop the regulation discussion a little bit because the reality that we faced was that we had to think about the global landscape of regulation. Remember, in HR products, the data rules and the regulatory rules are they're very different. Even just the way you think about things like privacy and decisions made by algorithms, it's just the entire context is so different depending on where you are in the world. And then that informs how customers think about product innovation. It also informs how they think about risk. So of course, at the beginning, we had like all of these great ideas, and we had to bring them before the AI ethics committee, which is a really good idea. If you don't have people that are smart about this, I recommend you get access to them. And had conversations to really help us understand where we could go wrong. And I think a few hints here of ways that we learn to navigate is a couple things. Having a strong understanding of where the tripwires are, right? Like if AI is making decisions unassisted by humans, that's probably going to create a tripwire. If AI can't be turned off in certain use cases, that's going to be creating a tripwire. So we luckily ran into a lot of these tripwires really early, and were able to sort of stop and regroup and rethink about how we were approaching it. We also had a really strong, sort of interest in using this technology to help everybody, not just HR leaders and not just organizations. And so thinking about how do we still value the individual within this context. And so this creates a need for a lot of transparency, right? Helping individuals understand unassisted where the algorithms might be looking at data, what they might be looking at, and what decisions they might be making, and really helping the end user understand how to take action based on what that analysis brought forward. So instead of, automation writ large, starting to think in terms of interactivity, end user models, and user experiences that help inform and clarify what is the contract under which you're capturing data, and what is the contract under which you're bringing information forward, and how should they interpret that, right? Is this a suggestion? Is this a calculation? Is this an answer? Is this an idea? And really helping to bring that entire life cycle forward. So all of those tripwires were very frustrating at the beginning, but I think actually helped really create a better understanding and better clarity, so that we could build velocity underneath that. And so again, my last big learning that I strongly recommend, so the same way I recommend making the technology you use swappable at any point, because over time we're going to see things come and go. Also, making your innovation easy to turn on or off by region, by location, by area, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to end up with technology that's great, that would serve a certain population really well, but can't be rolled out in a global environment because one small group can't get it past their regulatory body or their works councils or whatever it might be. And so having that configuration in mind and understanding that that might come your way when you first start will help make everything go faster in the end.
All right, very good. All right, we've kind of commingled, if you would, really thinking about the challenges also with advice. So as we think about the next question, I'm gonna if we put that one up, if we could put a single bullet point or a single sentence into, what advice would you give the product leaders if you're on this journey, right? Greg, what would you say? Give me a single bullet or single sentence.
Oh, I like so many more words than that.
I know.
Right now, I would say always be learning. Do something meaningful, but get something underway and be learning. Because if you don't build it as a core competency or capability now, other companies around you will be, and you'll find yourself falling behind very quickly in the future.
You are the vessel. You are the vessel for learning. Meg, I heard lots of advice in your discussion.
I really do. I love Greg's advice. I just want to add to that. Put the analysis of what you want to learn as part of the thing that you build in the first place, so that as you get customers using it, as you are evolving the product capability, you are also having the data to inform what was working and what wasn't working, when and how. So really think in terms of what you're going to capture as part of the usage of whatever you're building, so that your learning can be informed by what customers are finding value from.
Okay. Wisdom there. We'll do our best to recap this. Okay, so the next question that we've got, let's consider this kind of a skim question, because I think we could probably do a whole CXO session just on this topic, because it's hard. But what are some ways that we can measure the impact of GenAI capabilities? Is it any different than we would handle in our normal roles of product management? Meg, any thoughts on that? Does the game change here on the measurement impact?
Yes, I think it becomes much more multidimensional, because I do think you could measure impact on the top line and the bottom line simultaneously. Most of the time we create new innovation, and the impact you're looking for is growth and top line, right? And then retention. But I think with GenAI, you have an opportunity to think about reducing cost as well, whether that's cost to build or cost to deliver or cost to implement. And so I think it would be useful to think about how you can drive all of that at the same time, because that's where the market is going.
All right.
Yeah, I don't, I mean,
here, Greg.
that was, I mean, the efficiency, the operating costs going down, and then, the standards of new sales retention. I mean, maybe the one other thing I might add is just, I know this maybe sounds bad, but the same idea is, are you building it as a competency in your product organization? Is the impact? Is it, because it isn't a one-time enabling technology, and it's sort of the future. So I think the impact would be is, are you either A, thinking differently on how you solve problems? Are you developing new solutions that are more cost efficient and using AI to accomplish those? Or are you leapfrogging your competition? All of those are to say, you should be measuring the impact partially of this right now on, are we thinking different, and on how we approach our product development.
Brilliant. No, and really one of the goals of our CXO Roundtable was in the flow of going into the topics that we are selecting, also hopefully having a spillover of career advice that happens in terms of the sharing of wisdom and experience from the leaders that are in our panelists that are here. So I'm hoping that we've accomplished that. All right, we do have a couple of questions that we're gonna catch at the very end here for our panelists. And I think what we wanted to do is just basically go through and summarize what we've heard here today. And again, our topic for those who've joined in is, how to fast track your generative AI product roadmap. And, we're going specific in GenAI specifically. But what we've heard today is really some wisdom and advice regarding choosing GenAI thoughtfully when strategizing and finalizing your roadmap, and really exploring possibilities with the build, buy, or partner equation to achieving your goals. Cost is always going to be a factor, and it's an amazing opportunity for us as well, but it's not certainly the only driver, because we've also got innovation opportunities and creating moments of delight and really connecting in a much more creative way with our clients, with the customers. Some other things, if I could just kind of recap here a little bit, the essence from the audience is that there is a profound opportunity that we have as product leaders right now at this moment in time. And in some ways, the game is always, it's the same as it ever was, but also this is an opportunity to unlock really the full potential of the product leaders, and potentially remove some of the drudgery that happens as a byproduct of the hard work and labor that goes into bringing things to market. So So again, thank you to the panelists for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, and your and being vulnerable with the discussion that we have today. This is really one of the goals that we've had, and your advice of always be learning. So with that, Shrikant, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. Quite, very important points that, Greg brought out, saying that the data team sometimes in isolation, product team thinks something else. How do you bring those two things together? You run into challenges. Productizing some of your ideas is a big thing you should be thinking of, not just experimentation. So I think that's a great point, and I completely agree. I mean, based on our experience also, we think that it'll be easy, but it takes months and years too sometimes, if you don't kind of make the teams together. And to Meg's point also, what you can turn off, turn on based on regions, and whether this whole concept of using one technology, but you can switch based on the cost and all the other parameters is also very important for product leaders. So I personally have some important tips to take to our team. So I'm glad that we had this discussion. So very quickly, I'll just give a quick overview about Harbinger, since we didn't introduce ourselves. So Harbinger works with product companies, enterprises, and digital publishers, primarily in the HR and learning domain, building their products and solutions. Our main goal is to help bring transformation in the way people work and learn. We have also a strong AI practice, which we've developed over the years, and we are focusing on efficiency creation, as well as creating new customer experiences, or improving the customer experiences through the whole generative AI capabilities that we've developed. So yeah, on that note, Marilyn, you want to share something about WorkTech quickly?
Yeah, thank you again. And Johnny, thanks for the intro at the very beginning of our session as well. But really what we do is we help to unlock the revenue potential of the amazing capabilities that are being developed and exist in the marketplace today. And my practice focuses specifically on the SaaS providers that sell to HR tech and more broadly at the fringes at WorkTech. And so we help with growth acceleration, getting ready for really to fire up that revenue engine is probably the best way to put it. Yeah, so thank you so much, panel. Thank you, Harbinger, for the opportunity to collaborate with you. Looking forward to, I think we've got another session planned in November at the end of the year. So we're going to continue on the CXO Roundtable. Love the format. Thank you so much to Greg for being here and for your wisdom and your insight. And Meg, your top 3, know where the tripwires are, make your technology swappable, and make it easy to turn on and off. I got some 3 points from you. And so again, really, really appreciate it. Why don't we take a couple of questions from that have come in during our session here today. Jonavi, what do we have in the queue?
Yeah, so we have a couple of great questions from Vinny. The first one, maybe we can take that. What has been the most innovative use case that you've seen with GenAI? Maybe something you found the most useful, or your customers have found the most value in. It could be any industry.
So where I have seen things that I'm getting really optimistic about, but I haven't seen fully realized in the market. But I've seen a few glimmers, and that is making data analysis easier and better for leaders, and especially pushing that down into the organization so individual managers can be better equipped. And I've seen it in interesting places, like understanding compensation philosophy, so that when you're talking to someone who always thinks they should be having a bigger raise than they got, be able to talk more informed, not just about what you're giving them, but also what that means in terms of the philosophy of the company and the pay equity values overall. So I see this as really, really elevating how individual managers can do a better job supporting not only their team members, but also the business goals, because there's really often a pretty big gap between those two things.
My favorite that I've seen recently is that a company who wants to provide onboarding to their global employees. And so that instead of sort of what they do is using generative AI, they create videos of themselves that are hyper high fidelity. And then those videos can be used to basically introduce, in different languages, but it's, you looks like you can use any language to sort of bring people on and make a personalized message. I don't know that that's the end of the most amazing thing, but it shows the potential when you're doing things like with videos. It's kind of like a deep fake of yourself, but it's the concept is that, you're able to do something like this that feels personal. It's you. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, watch Reid Hoffman's Reid AI video if you have time. That's a good way to get your head around what you're describing there, Greg.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Greg and Meg. Maybe I know we are over the time, but maybe real quick, if there's an interesting question, because we were talking about balance all this while, learning versus velocity and so on. There's a question about how much testing and validation should you do before broadly releasing GenAI features? Maybe we
you're
can
never
take
going to
this
be
one
able to
last
test it.
question and then-
Yeah, you're never going to be able to test it fully because every time it gives you a different answer, of course, and it's learning ongoing. But I think the thing that you do need to test well is, again, the overall governance, the overall user interaction, and the overall clarity so that you're not over or under promising what those features are offering. Then that you're going to just have to have a really good velocity, recognizing and understanding that things will go wrong. Right? So it's not just about testing, but you need to have your entire life cycle of what do you do for repair in the moment and ongoing, because that learning is going to also involve a few embarrassing moments. There's just no way around it.
All I have to say is triple what Meg said. And I won't answer it any further than I think this is where sometimes using the simple things like this is a beta, we're not always going to get this right. I know they sound simple, but people start to expect precision out of these things. And the more honest you are that like, sometimes you're going to get a wacky response. That's what the vendors are doing. So that like the big ones, the Geminis, the OpenAIs, they're trying to let you know they don't. I would just encourage being aware of the same things Meg was saying, but in your product experience, find ways to make sure you're admitting to them that they may not see the perfection that it might feel like without that warning. I don't know if that
don't put glue on your pizza, no matter what it tells you.
I think I think on that note, maybe we should bring this session to a close. This brings us I don't know how the 1 hour went by, but it brings us to the end of an amazing and insightful CXO Roundtable. And I want to thank our panelists, Meg and Greg, as well as Marilyn and Shrikant, for all the valuable information that they've shared. It's given us some great food for thought, which I'm sure will help us go back and be better prepared to incorporate GenAI into our product roadmaps and at speed, velocity, as Meg said. We've tried to get to, I think, most of the questions. There are a couple unanswered, but we'll make sure that we address them in our follow-up email, which you'll receive with the recording link as well. So, and last but not least, thanks to all of you who joined us today, took time from your busy schedule to be here with us today. And we hope to see you on the next Power Hour, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.